Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome. Fremde, étranger, stranger. Glücklich und sehen, je suis enchanté. Happy to see you. Leibe Rest, stay und sagen willkommen. Bienvenue, welcome to my YouTube channel, to my YouTube channel, to my YouTube channel. Hello everybody, it's great to see you. My name is Michael Rubenfeld, and why am I smiling like this? Why am I so happy? Well, I don't know. Maybe it's something to do with the fact that it's Tuesday? No, that's not it. But the sun is shining today in Krakow. The snow has melted. Na razie. And we're alive. We're healthy. Fun fact, I just had COVID. Funner fact, I'm no longer testing for COVID. So perhaps this is also why I'm in a bit of a good mood today. Or perhaps I'm in a bit of a good mood because I'm no longer obsessing over the insanity that was the Grzegorz Braun incident. I did actually post another video making fun of Grzegorz Braun that YouTube decided was hate speech because I was calling for the eradication of the Jews from Parliament satirically, because if you didn't know, I am a Jew and I like the Jews. But according to YouTube, I was being an anti-Semite, which is a bit ironic, don't you think? Don't you think? Anyways, that is enough of this tomfoolery. This is now the moment that I shift into what the subject of this video is going to be, which is somebody by the name of Dawid Kurzmann. Probably most of you have never heard the name Dawid Kurzmann, but many of you have probably heard the name Janusz Korczak. Now, of course, Janusz Korczak was a very well-known author before the war, but he's perhaps most famous for the story of the orphanage that he used to run and how, along with the students of his orphanage, he went to Treblinka and died with them tragically there. Now, what's interesting about Dawid Kurzmann is that he has a story that is almost identical to Janusz Korczak, but very few people know anything about him. So today I'd like to tell you a little bit about him. The reason that I've decided to focus on Dawid Kurzmann is probably connected to the fact that I live in Krakow, and some have dubbed him KRAKOW'S KORCZAK, which I think is a little bit reductive, but, you know, whatever works to shine a spotlight on this man and what he did in Krakow. I think the other reason that I think about him maybe more frequently than others is because, in fact, Dawid Kurzmann ran an orphanage in Krakow at 64 Dietla Street, which is just down the street from my house. And so I frequently pass it, and I frequently see this. This is a fragment of the sign that is on the outside of the building that basically says Jewish orphanage. But of course, I saw that well before I understood why that was there. And for the longest time, there was nothing even commemorating what this building was. Now, there is a plaque on the outside of this wall. Basically, Dawid Kurzmann, born in Rzeszów in 1865, later moved to Krakow where he started a company, iron, steel, and metal products, that became quite successful, and it was the money that he earned in this business that allowed him to invest into the orphanage. And this orphanage was running before the war, and during the war, the orphanage continued to run. It was moved to Podgórze in the Krakow ghetto. There were in fact 3 locations of where the orphanage used to exist in the ghetto, and part of the reason for that is that the Krakow ghetto kept being shrunk. And as the ghetto was shrunk, the orphanage was required to move locations. And its final location was at Józefowska 41. On October 28, 1942, the Germans, who had up until then allowed the orphanage to exist, decided to liquidate the orphanage. 200 orphans were taken to the Belzec Death Camp. Dawid Kurzmann and Anna Furstein, who was the head teacher at the orphanage, were given the option by the Germans to be relocated. And rather than agree to what the Germans had offered them, which might have in fact saved their lives, they made the decision to go with the orphans to the Belzec death camp, where they were all murdered. There was not a single survivor. The story, very similar to Korczak's, yet for some reason is almost unknown in Poland and the world. And the question is, why? Why are some stories told and why are some stories not told? Why is Korczak's story so known and why is Kurzmann's story not known? There are a couple of theories why, and they're probably right. The reality is that Korczak was already famous at the time of what happened to him. And because of his fame, his death had more relevance for people than Kurzmann's death. The other thing is that although Korczak and Kurzmann were both Jews, Korczak was a more secular Jew and Kurzmann was a far more Orthodox Jew. And there might have been something to do with the fact that Kurzmann had a tendency to stay back in the shadows of the orphanage, whereas I think that Korczak was far more front and center. And I think that that just has to do with the type of man that Kurzmann was and the type of man that Korczak was. It's not a value judgment at all. But I think that it's interesting that we have 2 almost identical stories. 2 stories of the heads of these orphanages who refused to allow their children to go to their deaths alone. Korczak is known throughout the world, really, and in Poland he's considered a national hero. Yet Kurzmann is barely known at all. There are a group of tour guides in a company called Walkative in Krakow who made the decision that they wanted to commemorate Kurzmann, and they managed to advocate for a plaque that now and continues to sit at Józefowska 41, commemorating the death of these orphans and Kurzmann's acts. And I believe they've even managed to get a small street named after Kurzmann. And so really fantastic work on their end. But I believe that it's still primarily unknown, his story. The organization that I co-direct with my wife has a location in the Krakow ghetto on Józefowska Street, not that far away from the site of where the orphanage once was. And sometimes I give tours of the Krakow ghetto for people. I'm not a tour guide, but sometimes I will give a tour when people request it. And I always like to take them to this site and to tell them Kurzmann's story because people don't know much about it and they're surprised by it. And in fact, I once did a sound and dance project called Memory Score in Podgórze, and one of the locations that we used was the former site of the orphanage. Here you can see a little clip of a couple of dancers who are dancing there. I actually have a full video of this project that maybe I'll release online so people can have an opportunity to watch it. Or maybe we'll just do it again live one day. That would be nice, wouldn't it? So what do you think about my theories about Korczak versus Kurzmann? Why Korczak is as known as he is and Kurzmann is as unknown as he is? Do you think that my theories were right, or what theories might you have? If Kurzmann's story is interesting to you, as it is to me, I encourage you to share this video with somebody so they might get to know who Kurzmann was. And as always, if you like content like this, I encourage you to subscribe, like, and all of that jazz.